For the longest time, for as popular as a franchise as TMNT was, they have really struggled with having decent movies since the first one. Aside from shows, only specials and small releases seeming to get any kind of serious acclaim, including last year's Netflix Rise of TMNT movie, that many agree gets at least the silver medal. I already know some of y'all want to defend TMNT 2007, and sorry, but you're wrong. One good scene in a mediocre movie does not make that movie not mediocre, just slightly better than the other ones. So it means something that Mutant Mayhem is the only theatrical TMNT film in 33 years to be actually good. Sure, I am still a little sour about this replacing Rise, and always will be. This movie already having a greenlit sequel and series before it even premiered I find very unfair and arrogant, so you're lucky it paid off. Produced by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, you know, these guys, and directed by the co-director of Mitchells vs. the Machines. Indeed, despite my initial slight pettiness, it ultimately endeared me with its own unique brand of the 2D 3D hybrid model, where instead of looking like a comic book like Spider-Verse, Mutant was inspired to look like school-age notebook doodles. Character designs are deliberately misshapen, visual accents are in the form of literal scribbles, and even colored to look like it's filled in with marker. I think it's fantastic. Every aspect of the visuals is exceptional. Environments, atmosphere, character animation, comedic timing, color, fight sequences, no notes. All great. I'm still not 100% on giving Donatello glasses. Admittedly, it does help when we see them without their masks, but
At least he's being given a certain amount of attention, certain posters aside.
in terms of personality, they work, but I don't think these are the strongest turtles ever written. Again, we have Leo being the main character with the most amount of emphasis and distinction, and the other three are basically their own unit of similar temperament with very specific individual identifiers, which would not be that obvious if they didn't speak them directly to the audience. There are signs of their usual personas in their fledgling forms. Donnie is not machine guy, but computer and anime guy. Mikey likes improv. They keep talking about how angry Raph is, but he's just aggressive and excitable. He's just not the miserable loner yet. Their distinctions aren't the strongest, but this movie kinda gets away with it. They might come off as a slightly generic group of teens, but they do have that sibling chemistry mix of mockery, familiarity, and affection. I'm always nervous at the prospect of 50-year-olds trying to write modern teenagers, but it is funny how some of the posters say permanent teenager Seth Rogen, and ultimately it works. It's the kind of dialogue that's meant to exude an energy than necessarily be laugh-out-loud funny. I did get a laugh at Mikey's head being compared to Stewie and Hey Arnold. They do go back to the well of everybody mutter under your breath at once quite a lot. But I know some of that is because the boys playing the turtles in another rare instance were able to record together, so some of that is improv, so points. However, I also like how Leo doesn't feel like he's inherently the leader. He just happens to be the one that's slightly more responsible than the others, so he ends up having to rally them when they go off the rails. It's very 2012 in that way, which isn't too far off to how this dynamic feels, except that while there is a lot of playful ribbing, it never erupts into a full-on fight, which would make it like one of the only TMNT movies to do so. But more importantly, the reason they work is that they have a united emotional motive and journey, making this the first movie where the group has an aspiration that goes beyond beat-up bad guy. And that is what really centers the plot and characters. But if you thought there were controversial choices for Splinter last time, this time, he's not Hamato Yoshi, and he's not even Hamato Yoshi's rat. He is literally a random New York rat who just happened to come by the turtles, raised them, and taught them martial arts for self-defense via TV. That is not my first choice. So in character ranking with other incarnations, this Splinter would be toward the bottom. But only relatively because of how amazing most of the other Splinters are, because I do love how much he loves his sons. He's not a wise ninja master, he's just an overprotective dad who wanted his kids to be able to protect themselves. This kind of Splinter was absolutely integral to the kind of story that this movie was telling, which more or less was to make it as teenage as possible. And not just because for the first time they're being voiced by actual, just barely still technically teenagers, it's that its story is reflecting teenage struggles manifested as fantastical conflicts. Parents struggle with their teens because they still see them as their clueless little children in a dangerous world. But unable to fully understand how dangerous the world is without experiencing it themselves, teenagers want to explore the outside world. They want to exude their independence. They want to be where the people are. This also makes April's role in this story a lot more narratively relevant than she is in a lot of other films where she almost could be written out and not lose anything, because she's their first contact, their first real risky step into the outside world, except it paid off and nothing bad happened. Now they want to go further, so they make a plan to try to replicate the success with April on a mass scale. Also, is this the only April since the beginning that's actually a reporter? Then there's an investigation, then there's fighting, it's all going great, so we're venturing even more out into unknown territory until, oh my gosh, doomsday scenario, how did we get here? We are way over our head, Dad, please come save us! Literally nothing more teenager than that that's not asking for money. And it's that consistent and gradual escalation of stakes that make it a very well-paced and structured screenplay, especially for the TMNT movie that I'm certain has the least action. The action that's there is fantastic. Of course it is. If it's technically under visuals, it's top tier. But even the moments of just the brothers by themselves is minimized as the movie retains its pace and momentum by consistently throwing the boys into new situations and environments or meeting new characters. In fact, on paper, having this many characters should have been a death sentence, and was ultimately only achievable because most of the mutants were basically in the background. Which is fine, because they're mostly just cool designs, nostalgic references, and overpriced celebrity voice drops. But Superfly is a great standout villain, and also Paul Rudd doing his best Andy Samberg. Wasted opportunity. But the trade-off is that if its comedy style doesn't work for you, then the movie's gonna be harder to get through. Still, acknowledging that the design and the animation is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, this is an immensely fun film, just not the movie with the most interesting TMNT lore. I only have one teeny tiny little thing that I have a genuine problem with. You need to stop making April a romantic target of the Turtles. I do like the 2012 series, but Donnie's crush on April was by far the worst thing about it. It kneecapped both of their characters, especially April, because she became that kind of boxed love interest where the bulk of her existence and actions is written for the benefit of not her story, but how it would affect Donnie or Casey. There have been 4 incarnations of this franchise in the past decade, and this has now happened in 3 out of 4 of them. Guess which one was the only one to not do it? Only now it's Leo and April. And just why? Why would you do that? Especially when you already have an entire generation of TMNT fans that believes that Leo has a thing for his sister.
Wait, you can't do this. We're related. Not by blood. Oh, cool. That's fine then.
Anime was a mistake. But what I can say about this movie's version is that it is less bad here than it is in the other 2, because it doesn't take up their entire character. In fact, it may already be over. They might have already closed it. It's hard to tell. But no more. No more than this. You assassinate this trope right now and double tap it. There's also the question of the ending, which will raise some eyebrows. While I am completely up for a sequel, what this means for its following series does not make me that excited. But I'll wait and see. I have been wrong before. And Jeff Rowe promises that the animators were absolutely not overworked. So Seth Rogen learned something from Sausage Party. But I'm really only gonna believe it if I hear it from the animators themselves. I don't have faith in anybody at the top. But otherwise, loved this movie, would recommend highly. But Rise is still better.